Well, joining us on the program this morning is Right Honorable Daniel Atayi, who joins us virtually to share his thoughts in this story and others in that regard. Hello, good morning to you, Honorable Atayi.
Good morning, ADBN, for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Let's get straight into the conversation. The decision to arm forest guards in response to new terrorist attacks, commendable, appreciable. There are not worries that it might be politicized in some way. Let's get your thoughts.
Well, I think it is very, very commendable. And of course, the citizens too, I think they appreciate this good idea. Of course, it is long overdue, because in other democratic nations where their population is as high as that of Nigeria, you have such rangers as forest guards. Arming them will help curb the menace of those guys, those bandits, terrorists that have chosen or metamorphosed from Boko Haram to marauding herdsmen who are now hiding in all over the country, especially in the Benue Plateau Trough. And as you can see, their plan is not just only to inhibit the forests, and of course you can hear the number of forests that they have occupied in the country, over 1,000 forests in the country, being occupied by these dangerous species. I call them dangerous species because they are out only for destructions and killings. And our regular armed forces cannot always be combing the forest, because I don't think that the armed forces were trained to remain in the forest. But the forest guards, they have been trained to remain in the forest. So if they are armed, certain percentage of the fight against these killers would be minimized. And I think it's a good start by the president. So if the North is saying that they are going to be compromised, of course there is nothing that cannot be compromised, especially when you have a state of corruption up to 90% in the country. But however, we still have men of prudence and dignity and patriotism that will say they are ready to defend their nation, and they will do the appropriate security operation of the forest. It's a welcome idea, and we thank Mr. President for assenting to this bill.
Now, the other angle to this conversation is a call for calm by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa. It's in the wake of renewed attacks with 3 communities in Borno State overtaken by Boko Haram. The army has been able to fight back in some parts, but in doing so, one of the camps was discovered to have a borehole amid other facilities. The questions are, when did these Boko Haram terrorists have time to sink a borehole and set up camps so much so that it almost seems as though they are so comfortable? I don't know how you appraise the development in that regard with the call for calm from the CDS.
It is the complicity of the military themselves. Like I said, there is no need mincing war. The general has also, of course, said that they are ready to deal with them, probably because there is a change of office. Like I have been on this security matter for years, and I have talked about our nationalism as a trajectory that we don't have. And because we don't have, the powers that be, mostly, of course, you can hear the Islamic sect within APC and all over other parties that they want to have what we call Muslim ticket. What do you understand by that ideology of pushing religious belief or religious ideology into democracy? It is because they want to compromise the system. And I can tell you, to a large extent, they have compromised the security. I'm talking about the national security. I'm talking about the armed. Of course, a situation where you have repentant Boko Haram or repentant bandits be given amnesty and then be admitted or recruited into the Nigerian armed forces. And these are radical guys, Islamic fanatics that wants to sell their ideas, sell their belief into the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You should know that there will be complicity, and of course there will be compromises. And because we do not take our country very seriously, because we don't even know the value of citizenship in Nigeria, it is not effective. You don't know your value now as a citizen. I don't know my value too as a citizen. We all give our patriotism to the country, and of course the country gives us nothing in return. So there is no defense for life. There is so many loopholes. However, we are committed as citizens to be patriotic. But like you know, a situation where you have religious trajectory, you have trajectory of ethnicity, you also have trajectory of tribalism. So these nepotistic bigotries will definitely militate against any security architecture that you think you have in your nation. Except a nation adheres strictly to the tenet and the content of their constitution, that nation will never have it nicely in terms of security or development or any other thing. Because the religious ideologists who have powers as Mr. President or Vice President or Senate President or Speaker of the House, don't forget, democratic powers controls the military and the armed forces. It is not the days where we say professionalism is in the military, where a military man is only loyal to the Nigerian Constitution to defend the sovereignty of the nation. What you have today, you have people who are loyal to their Bible, to their Quran, who are loyal to their Hadith, who are loyal to their Sharia law, and they have jettisoned loyalty and patriotism to the Nigerian Constitution. That is where the fault comes from. And until the President and the National Assembly reform the Constitution and make stringent laws, punishment against those who violate the tenet, either by their religious
But Honorable Atayi, much like Boko Haram is a sect known for religious extremism, the challenge is that we've been fighting this battle for well over a decade, 2 decades plus. Is it just laws? We've had reports that they are known associates and sponsors of terrorism in the country. I would think that at this point, the Interpol owes Nigeria the duty of handing over the report and the government empowered to go after these terrorism financiers. What do you think?
I was just going towards that direction, and I told you about compromises, and I told you also that the military or the security architecture of this country are no longer enforcing the law because majority of them have compromised to their either religious belief or partisan belief affiliation or political belief in terms of the people they have in high-ranking positions who can easily compromise them, that their advocacy or their loyalty is no longer to the Nigerian Constitution. And where you have a situation like that, that the law could not even be enforced against those who break the law, who have powerful offices either as military men, paramilitary men, or politicians, flouting or jettisoning the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, there are bound to be problems. And that is why you see they could infiltrate the army barracks, even have time enough to dig tunnels And you want to tell me that the military intelligence or the military in the barracks are not aware of when in the tunnels, or they are not aware of when they have no intel about when the attacks will happen and so on. No, I don't believe that. Even people in Israel, people in Russia, people in America, military architectures in foreign land could forecast, even use the satellite to know and to tell what is happening in Nigeria. So why will Nigerian military will not have sophisticated equipment despite all the amount? And I think they have, but because they compromise the security strategies, and that is why these religious extremists are having upper hand to the extent that they have the guts to even break into military barracks, because they have friends, they have their religious brothers, they have friends in the army, in the police, in the armed forces, in all over the armed forces. That is the complicity of the military architecture of the country. And I make bold to say it, that it will be very difficult, very, very difficult, if not for compromise and complicity for external forces to get into the military barracks, kill our soldiers, make away with weapons, bombard everywhere, and even have dug tunnels in the barracks. It is unbecoming and it is uncalled for. It is unacceptable, and I think the president have to reject strictly not only the constitution, the military apparatuses and the heads, so that they can be patriotic in their service to their motherland. We don't have to be loyal to our religious practices. We have to be loyal to the democratic constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That is the patriotism that is demanded and requested and expected of them.
Now let's move on to another issue in the news in this regard. Many have cited a breakdown in law and order as some reasons why a few African countries have broken down or degenerated into military junta rule away from democratically elected governments. But whilst this is the case, there have been debates and modalities on the arrangements to transition them back to a democratically elected government. One of them is Mali. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is commending Mali's transition to a democratically elected government while calling on African unity. This, you would recall, is happening at a time when there's conversation on the Sahelian states and ECOWAS's position on what the bloc needs to do to strengthen democratical alliance across the West African region. Let's get your thoughts on this development.
My brother, you see, it is a good thing to be democratic in nature. It is a good thing for Nigeria and most African countries to become democratic nations. But you will bear me this witness, and this is a truism, that democracy hasn't worked effectively in Africa as we have it in the first world countries. Democracy in the United States of America, where we bought this idea of power of the people, by the people, and for the people from, if you look at the way they practice their democracy, they have agreed in the constitutional reform. They have also agreed in digital voting system and electronic transmission of results, where a Democrat or an electorate can vote and know and be very sure that his or her vote would count. A situation where the opposite is the case in African countries. Would you say we have a democracy? Of course, no. And if democracy must be imbibed as the governments that all nations in the world must have, why then will the first world countries that sold the democracy to us will not make it firm to such that democracy itself can account for itself? That Nigerians or Africans can obey leaders. I mean, leaders will not usurp the democratic powers by not providing that voting system, electronic transmission like we have in other nations, even small African country like Ghana. So when people are beginning to call on the military to come back, it is because they see that the military are very disciplined, they follow their tenets, they follow the constitution, they obey the last order. And if you see military government, they cannot disobey anything that has been court-martialed or anything that is coming from the military supreme council. They cannot jettison the order of their law. They cannot disobey it. But you can see in a democracy, a court of competent jurisdiction will give order, like in the case of Benue and so many other states, where orders will be given. A democratically elected governor will jettison the order. A democratically elected assembly will jettison the order of the court, will ignore the order of the court completely. There is no obedience to law and order by the very people who makes the law, who are supposed to oversee the law. How do you call that democracy? People are not obedient to the Nigerian constitution, even to the Malian constitution. People flout their religious constitutions and books, and they obey those things more than the democratic constitution of a nation. Would you say that is a democratic nation? Of course, no. So when you see like in Burkina Faso, where Ibrahim Traore is championing the cause of a new evolution, a neo-colonialism, that he said neo-colonialism and imperialism must stop in his country. You can see that the whole world, the whole Africans, they are with him. They are in solidarity, complete solidarity with him, because people know, citizens are aware, Africans are aware that our democracy is like a ploy, like a great gift to us. We were never ripe for the democracy. And of course, you can bear me witness that even in Nigeria, they say we cannot operate state police because we are not ripe for it. But in a democratic nation, you have control. A federating unit like a state have the power to, in fact, secure their, not only their state sovereignty, their territories, but to protect their citizens, their indigents, their lives and their properties. They have the power to make laws of security controls of their own. That is a democratic nation to me. A nation where in a democracy only the president has the power. Only the president, being the commander-in-chief, has the power of the military, has the power of the paramilitary, has the power of the judiciary, has the power of the electoral umpire, even has the power of the masses. That is not democratic enough. And that is why Africans are beginning to shift away from their concept of democracy. And are beginning to read that if the West cannot help standardize our democracy by sanctioning those who are flaunting the etiquette of democracy, it means the democracy is only to hoodwink Africans, to ensure that African resources are stolen, to ensure that African governments are managed by the West and are directed by the West, and that only those who are the ruling class, the oligarchs, are the ones that the Americans and the European nations will respect. So citizens who are poor masses, who are the electorate, whatever about them does not concern the first world countries that sold the democracy to all. So if the democracy is not working in Africa, I'm not calling perhaps for a military takeover, but you can see the contrast. When you juxtapose, you will discover that military government works effectively because people have to fear the law.
Honorable Atayi, ruling in fear is almost more or less not a way to end.
For instance, Ibrahim Traore is not ruling in fear.
But
the people who ought to be afraid are the bandits,
Honorable,
are the terrorists,
Honorable Daniel Atayi, world all over the world, it is still proven with different case studies where democracy is seen to be thriving that it far supersedes any military rule. And on that note, let's move on to another issue where one of the symbols of our democracy in terms of the National Assembly is looking at some of the reasons why there might be voter apathy, and we never really get the true reflection of the people's vote. Noting the likes of Australia, Belgium, and Brazil, where compulsory voting has been instituted. The House of Representatives considered a bill for compulsory voting. It is now scaled second reading. They're also recommending fines of imprisonment and 100,000 naira fine for eligible voters who default. Do you consider this a move to engender increased voter participation in Nigeria?
Well, we have proffered several solutions like that to the Nigerian government on several media occasions. But of course, they know it all at the National Assembly. And of course, you can see what is happening at the National Assembly at the moment. So far, so good. I think the House of Representatives are even making effective laws more than the House of Senate as we have it right now. Because the House of Representatives have been very, very firm in talking about constitutional reform, that this constitution of ours is not democratic enough and something needs to be done. The voter apathy in the country, of course, is obvious. Because when you look at the population and equate it to the number of persons that vote, of course, no country in the world will accept that only 8,000 people, 8 million people will vote to elect a president. Or in a state where you have about 5 million people, you are having about 300,000 votes electing a governor. Is unacceptable. Democratic tenet, at least 2/3 of the majority of the vote of the electorate ought to have voted to produce a president or to produce a governor. It is there in our electoral act. But you can see that the interpretation continue to go on by the judiciary. Because when they fail to elect themselves, they run to the court because that you don't have democratic institutions or a constitution that is strong or stringent enough. If our laws are stringent enough, our electoral laws are stringent enough, and people pay the penalties of flaunting those laws or disobeying these laws, I bet you everybody will sit up. And that is why we say that if it is the military that is conducting an election, nobody will joke, because if you joke,
Honorable Daniel Atayi, please let's not toe that line again. We all remember the famous June 12th. Hold on. We all remember the famous June 12th annulment and how it took donkey years since 1993 before a confirmation was made on how that election was so annulled and democracy was eroded, having the military oversee elections. I don't think pre-intends the constitution of INEC to oversee elections. I don't beg that we go down that route again. We're talking about a compulsory voting bill and not the enforcement of the bill by the military.
See, the INEC, as we have it today, is a discouragement to the electorate. But of course, those who are at the helm of affairs, who are the political leaders of this nation, right from the president to the councillors, I can tell you, they would want to control the electoral umpire, and indeed, they are controlling it. If not, tell me where in a nation where it has to be the president that will approve, or the National Assembly that will approve money, funding for what? The electoral umpire.
But that's a subject. That's a subject of the provisions of the Constitution Amendment Review that is also currently ongoing, where the independence and autonomy of such institutions as INEC, to include the appointment of presiding officers, would be looked at. But in the interim, the question again is, if compulsory voting is instituted, would this help reduce voter apathy, other than talking about the technicalities of having the military enforce it?
Compulsory voting, people, you don't even need to compare Nigerians before they go out to vote. They have refused to vote, and you are seeing the voters apathy because they believe that their vote doesn't count and has never been counted. If it has been counted, they would be seeing it like you are seeing me via this Google Meet. I am the one in my house, and you reach out to me, and we are talking so electronically. You are hearing me effectively, and I am hearing you effectively. So what happens to electronic voting system? If the Central Bank of Nigeria can account for all the monies of other commercial banks.
Good point. Good point, Honorable Atayi.
Electronically account the citizens' money.
Good point.
How come that our electoral system can't account for our voting, electronic voting and transmission?
Now,
and therefore, when people told a part of manual and analog means of doing a thing that is supposed to be digital in this 21st century, it is boring. So people get discouraged.
Now, Honorable Atayi, I must applaud you. This is a point in which I reckon with. I agree with you very solidly on this point, unlike the others, because I believe this should be one of the conditionalities if we say voting should be compulsory. If it's just compulsory based on a fine and jail term.
You cannot tell me to transport from Abuja or from Lagos to go to my village, my polling unit, before I cast my vote. Who does that in this 21st century? I am using WhatsApp. I can reach Mr. President on WhatsApp. I can reach anybody on Facebook, on WhatsApp, on Twitter, on Google Meet. I can do anything. I can do my registration. Even school online. I am schooling now in Canada. I'm in Nigeria. I have everything online, ongoing, pay my school fees online, do everything online. Even the senators, the representatives, the president himself, all of them are working online. How come that in voting and electing your leaders, your democratic leaders, could not be done online, could not be done digitally? It's a deliberate mischief on the part of the government. And it is a deliberate mischief so that they will have loopholes for rigging, so that the electorate vote will not count. I tell you, that will not be a democratic nation enough. That is like killing democracy. The system of the country itself is what is killing democracy. And that is why you have this uproar of people now advocating for military to come back.
Honorable Atayi.
Democracy is the best form of government.
Honorable Atayi.
Anywhere, but you have to allow democratic etiquette, democratic tenet, democratic obtainables to come to be.
Honorable Atayi.
To be effective, especially the.
Hold on, Honorable Atayi. Honorable Atayi, let's go back to another conversation. You talked about the civic responsibility and the need that it doesn't entirely need to be compulsory. Some Nigerians reacting to this discussion are saying that as much as Brazil, Belgium, and Australia have adopted it, in Nigeria, if we're keeping with human rights, the freedom of choice, freedom of association, we don't need military interference. Voting does not need to be compulsory. Nigerians need to see it as a civic responsibility, choose to or choose not to.
Voting is not compulsory, but voting is a patriotic act. It's a patriotic act. Every citizen is supposed to be eligible citizens supposed to be enthusiastic that they must carry out their democratic franchises by electing who leads them. You can't tell me that you make a choice for me when I have a choice myself. So when I have the PVC, when I have the election, I have to vote from the comfort of my home and just probably go for confirmation on the terminals. And these things can be done. And then today you are having out of 150 million electorate of Nigeria. I'm not talking about the entire population of over 300 million already in the country. Then you are having 8 million people voting to elect your president, or voting to elect, you have 300,000 people voting to elect your governor in a state where you have over 5 million electorate. And then you have the voters record as very minute because we don't have data management, or we deliberately refuse to use our data analysis and storage, database storage to effectively run our state and our nation. We still behave like analogous people, like people in the 18th century. In this 21st century, so we go manual because the manual is easy for them, or easier for them to manipulate and to rig. Just as it is called, manual, very easy to manipulate. That is what we have in our country.
Now, Honorable Atayi, in keeping with all the conversations, let's look at a more human angle. Most of our conversations now have seen you heap blame on our leaders. It's still another issue of institutions here. The recently concluded Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination conducted by JAM saw a mass poor performance. A panel was set up to probe this reason following outcry by parents and students. JAM admitted that over 397,000 of those candidates were unfairly failed owing to technical glitches. Now, the House of Representatives is moving to probe this. Some exams are supposed to be resat today, but there's challenge with security. The Southeast is complaining that most of its JAM candidates who would need to resit this examination might be at security risks in doing so. Let's get your thoughts with these multifaceted challenges affecting the outcome of the 2025 UTME.
If you want to have my take on this, like I have said on several platforms, that both WAEC and JAM, they are just tools, fraudulent tools. They are no longer tests of knowledge, and they should not be yardsticks for admitting students into tertiary institutions. I had a course yesterday since the glitch in JAM system happened, just for over 1.something million registrars who registered for the JAM, and you are beginning to have glitches. I can tell you that it is a deliberate act again, because JAM itself, that tends to be digital, would not tell me that their system cannot accommodate just 1.something million candidates who registered for the matriculation examination. Now, let me ask the federal government, why are they still keeping JAM and WAEC as tests of knowledge or yardsticks for admission? We were using aptitude tests in those days. Were they effective? Yes. Were they admitted into the universities? Yes. Were the aptitude tests well handy, and you can see a person-to-person writing the examination with his or her brain? Yes. Were there anything like rigging? I never rigged a cheat during my WAEC time. Yes. There was nothing like cheating. And when they graduate, were they productive enough in their field of study? Yes. They were productive in this nation. And in fact, they made about the 2/3 part of the productive industries that we have in this country. I'm talking about the students we breed from our universities in the 80s, in the 70s, and in the 60s. But in this 90s, the students that we are breeding, they will write WAEC with money, pay 60 to 100,000, and then they will go to JAMB and write with money. The government will collect this money, and then they will write aptitude tests again in school, in the universities or colleges, and then they will now be given admission, study for 4 years, and go to service for 1 year to do their National Youth Service Corps, and then come out with only their uniform. They carry the paper certificate to go and be looking for a job. What a nation. Meanwhile, in the 60s, in the 70s, and in the early 80s, before you graduate, you already know the industry that you are going to work. Now we have graduates littered everywhere, yet JAMB is still collecting fee. WAEC is still collecting fee. You are still paying tuition fees and paying school fees through your noses, through your eyes, stressing yourself, and then to become a graduate. To become a graduate of what? To become a graduate of paper certificate? Is that how to build a nation? We should go back to technical studies. We should go back to productive scientific knowledge. And if it is any other artistic courses that we want to study, we should go back to the accounting. We should go back to the shorthand, to the typewriting, to the commercial studies. We should go back to study and be productive. We should not base JAMB as a yardstick, WAEC as a yardstick, because they are not tests of knowledge.
Honorable Atayi, can we borrow from this antecedents? Let me ask you a question, because I've seen another angle to this conversation. You see how Nigerians, despite the advocacy for the need to go back to technical education, how Nigerians rose their voices when this technical glitch happened, and the institution was called to account. An apology, very remorseful one, where we saw Professor Ishak Oloyede shed tears and apologize to Nigerians, and another opportunity was given for a retake, in as much as you have your discretions about JAMB. Can WAEC borrow from this? Should Nigerians say the technical glitch that occurred in the IREVAN and broke the trust deficit, would we see INEC told the part of JAMB apologize and give Nigerians another retake? I'm looking at the positives of such antecedents, as much as you have your challenges with scrapping the exam in total. What do you think about this?
Well, the INEC, of course, I have.
I see you laughing. I see you laughing because you understand my question. Look, in as much as these issues are issues in the country, if we see an antecedent where a man in charge of an institution takes the blame, should other institutions borrow leave from JAMB?
They should borrow from JAMB, of course. And they should not only borrow from JAMB. INEC has no right whatsoever to complain that they have IREV issues, they have terminal issues, they have whatever issues. I mean, to the tune of 4 billion in Naira. Are they giving that to JAMB or WAEC? Allocated for INEC to conduct an election that is not even going to be a year. Election that is going to be a matter of 1 day, 24 hours. For all the elections, probably it won't even take a month. And 4 billion naira or more, 413 billion, I mean, will be allocated to INEC to conduct election. Election that is not even transmitted electronically. Election that has no digital registration.
Now, Honorable Atayi, these are strong points you're raising. Now we have compared both institutions. Let's come back to JAMB, especially with allocation and funding. Now, the House of Reps, talking about ways we can fix this technical glitch, have also identified that increased allocations for JAMB need to be deliberated upon in a bid to construct computer-based test centers in every local government, 774, so that students have time for mock preparations ahead of the real JAMB. What do you think about this move?
It is a fantastic idea, but you know I'm an advocate of the scrapping of JAMB and WAEC. I am an advocate of it because it is wasting of resources, wastage of resources. We are wasting our money for nothing, and that to me is an indirect tax burden on citizens and especially our citizens who want lab. If I can pass my primary school and get admission into secondary school, and I want to go into tertiary institution, is for me to be productive as a citizen, to contribute my quota, my citizens' right to the Nigerian institutions or to the Nigerian government. I want to give my quota, I want to give my service to the country. The country is not supposed to tax me via WAEC, give me an embargo via JAM, and frustrate me through my service year in the NYSC, then give me paper certificate to go and look for a job on my own. As a citizen that have paid direct taxes and indirect taxes through my tuition fees, my accommodation fees, my NEPA fees, and so on, I am supposed to go to any institution that I want to attend without the embargo or the yardstick of JAMB or WAEC. I can sit before any principal or online test and pass my exam and be admitted, given admission to any college that I want to. There should be no stopping me, because after all, coming out of the institution, I am still in charge of myself. The government is not doing anything for me in terms of job, providence of job, or providence of accommodation, or providence of a better livelihood. There is no security whatever for me. There is no security money or what we call a national security whatever for citizens or citizens' democratic right. There has been nothing like that in Nigeria and most of the African countries, unlike what we have in the Western nations, where even a child of a day, the government is accountable for that child. Unemployed, the government is accountable for that unemployed youth. An unemployed elderly, the government is accountable for that unemployed elderly.
Now, Honorable Atayi,
is zero in the country, and we need to, these things are in the Nigerian
Honorable Atayi,
to invoke those things and make citizens happy for once in this country. Let the
Honorable Atayi,
let the teenage elite that wants to be schooled, let them breathe for once in this country. Let's have a productive, let's have a trajectory of nationalism.
Honorable Atayi, as much as you express your thoughts, let's also leave room for factual reporting, which is part of the responsibility saddled on me as host and on our medium as ADBN Television. When you say there is zero attempt of government to provide succor in that regard, it might not be entirely true. Like we see in the current administration, where the need to revisit the concepts of student loans have been reintroduced. And even when there are cries of some discrepancies as it concerns Nail Fund, we have the House of Representatives swinging to uncover if these are true. And we're seeing improvements in some regards. So whilst you express displeasure about the state of these things, let's also do well to accommodate areas where there have been some efforts by government and some improvements recorded. I saw a video of a cross-section of beneficiaries of this loan. NIMSI also was called into question to verify the identity of those receiving these loans by use of NIN. It was quite commendable that there's now some level of transparency in government initiatives where Nigerians can say, oh, we know the beneficiaries of this initiative. They are not Party A or Party B members. They are actual Nigerians who require this financial assistance in some sort to help with the cost of education. Don't you think so?
Yes, I commend Mr. President for those initiatives. But I will still tell you this. Look, like I said, Mr. President, even the past president always have good blueprints for national trajectories. Always. Remember the time of IBB. We used to have Vision 2000 during the days of IBB. And that Vision 2000, when Abacha came, Abacha now said Vision 2010. And when Obasanjo came, Obasanjo said Vision 2020. And when Yaradua came, he was trying, Yaradua and Jonathan. I had something like Vision 2030 and Vision 2050. Now, from the time of Shagari to the time of President Tinubu, and from the time of our independence, 64 years and counting, no vision have been effectively implemented and executed for the masses. But of course, trillions and quadrillions of dollars have been executed, stolen. We are hearing from this school, university student loan, that a professor, a VC, was arrested and brought for questioning for diverting student loan. Now, they made the, let me call it palliative or interventions. It is only when it comes to the masses that government interventions will have bureaucracy and protocols. Do you need those bureaucracies and protocols? Mr. President came out with a very good blueprint for students. Why do you even give student loan and then hijack their papers when they graduate? And you know that when they graduate, you are not the one to give them job, but you are with their papers. They will have to look for job for. I have a younger brother that have graduated the past 13 years and has no job, and is scientifically fit and proactively, pragmatically fit, computer tested guy. As a matter of fact, no job, 13 good years. The other day he said he wants to commit suicide. Then I talked to my House of Rep member, Congressman Philip Agbese, and said, please get this guy a job for me. And that is what he is doing at the moment.
Thanks for that intervention, indeed, because it's quite sad. There's also an incident of suicide recorded following the results posted by JAM. A 19-year-old girl in Lagos sadly took her life owing to this. So thankfully you intervened.
Probably, I wrote JAM 3 times. While my mates were 300 level, I was still writing JAM. And meanwhile, while in high school, I come first, I come second. I wrote my secondary school work at GSS Northbank, 72 Airborne Barracks. And I tell you, Mr. Ben, who was my physics master, was standing by me looking at my physics practical examination. And he praised me, he said, well done, Dan. This is a distinction. This is a distinction. The same was true with my mathematics, my chemistry, my biology, my agricultural science, my economy, and when they were, I wrote these things from my head. Alas, a wife first hid my result, seized my result for being so competently written, and then later changed my surname from Atayi to Ajayi. From Atayi to Ajayi, I don't know the gap between T and J in the alphabetical order is about 26 gap, 26 alphabet. Yet, why had the effrontery to change my name, my surname, and gave me another person's result? That made me to go and be receipted. By the time I went to Justice Development and Peace Commission, 350 Murtala Mohammed Yaba, to complain because I had no money to hire a lawyer then. Before we went to work at Ogba, started looking for my real result. Behold, distinctions parallel. Somebody else. Is that a yardstick, a test of knowledge that you call work? JAM, the same thing. JAM can make you sit at home, not going to school. School that you will go and they will be teaching you theoretical subject. And this theory, in fact, our entire curriculum in the universities and secondary school need to be overhauled if we want a productive nation in the next 5 to 10 years.
Now before we move on to the next subject, I want to ask a question in remedifying this situation. Much like we have common entrance examinations when students are looking to gain admission into secondary schools, do you think that the conduct examinations for admissions into tertiary institutions should be saddled with the institutions and not with bodies like WAEC and JAM? These are for institutions in Nigeria, mind you, because if you need to gain admission...
We should be saddled with the institutional aptitude test. As a matter of fact, our population explosion is much. We don't need those things. We need our citizens all to be educated. So what you do, education is not only writing and speaking English. Education should be productive work. Technical schools. If your child has a gift from the age of 6 years, you are monitoring that child. This child can dance. This child can play football. This child can sing. This child wants to be an engineer. Is technical in nature. Take that child to the football school. Take that child to the dancing school. Take that child to the fashion school. And those things should be in our primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions. So that when students are coming out, they will not come out with jargons in their mouth that they are speaking English, or they have gone to study theoretical studies and become expert in theories, and then no practical orientation in anything. This is what the West do, and they are ahead of us, and we are wondering. Somebody who will be called Serena Williams is playing table tennis. She's playing table tennis.
Tennis rather. Not table tennis, tennis rather.
Somebody will be a footballer. Football academics are not recognized. Those things should be incorporated into the curriculum and the syllabuses we have in our primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions, so that people can come out productive.
All right.
And not come out with papers.
All right.
What is killing me is that paper they are giving us. When you give us this paper, we are on our own. Am I going to eat the papers?
All right.
What am I going to do with those distinctions?
Now, in closing, we'll talk about one subject I know you might also be very passionate about because it hits close to home. The National Bureau of Statistics just published the April inflation rates. Looking at headline inflation, marginally dropping from 24.3% it was previously to 23.71%. Now, it's more concerning that whilst that is depreciating in some sorts by margins, food inflation has skyrocketed, with Benue State recording 51% in food inflation. Food prices in the state, dubbed to be the food basket of the nation, is now as expensive as states where they don't have even as much agrarian activities. Let's get the true picture of what is happening in that regard in your state. Hello? Honorable Atayi? Whilst the network has... Hello, can you hear me, Honorable Atayi?
Yes, I can hear you now. Repeat the question, please.
Yes, please. I said this might be a question that would hit close to home owing to the statistics we're getting from Benue State. There's been a new consumer price index and GDP rebasing. As much as people are applauding a depreciation in food inflation, April statistics show it has depreciated to 23.71%. However, food inflation has hit 51% in Benue State, a state dubbed to be the food basket of the nation. Honorable Atayi, what is the true picture of things in Benue? Why is food now more expensive than it is in the food basket of the nation as compared to other states where they have lesser agrarian activities?
It is because of the marauding herdsmen and bandit killing. Nothing more than that. We don't go to farm anymore in Benue because our farms are occupied by strangers and killers. And not just strangers and killers. You see them, they will chase you from your farm. They will also chase you down to your home, kill you, kill your wife, kill your children, and then ask the government to come and carry the corpses. So they are the owners of our farms now. No longer going to farm because you don't want to be there. So you stay at home and your crops are being eaten by their cows and their sheep and goats. So that is the country we find ourselves, because they are superior and because they are carrying arms. How can you go and fight criminals and terrorists in your farm that are carrying arms and you are not with arms? And so that is why we've been telling the state government that being the chief security of the state, if you say you don't have much to do because the commander-in-chief has not intervened, you have much to do. One of the things I proffered 2 days ago, I shared the governor's handle on Facebook, and I said, condemning these killings, which is already taking us to food insecurity, is not enough. Start government mechanized farming across the 23 local governments and the 276 wards of the state. Each ward should have a mechanized large farm that can feed the people. Let us go back to the Operation Feed the Nation. Because in those days, we have government lands, government large-scale agricultural scheme, farming. Farm produces yam, cassava, groundnut, what do you call it, maize, corn, guinea corn. We have them in abundance in Benue. But today, you can see what these guys have done to us. These guys that have been helped by, we don't know whether, I don't know how to classify them, but I know the compromise of our government and security apparatus, they are the ones that make this to be like this. In our state now, honestly, every week you are seeing 50 dead. Next week you are seeing 100 dead. And all the political juggernaut to do is to come out and condemn it. And the condemnation has been since 3 decades, 30 years ago. And it has not stopped. Why are we hypocritical? Why are we pretending not to know what to do when what to do is right before us? I said, go to the National Security Advisor's office and ensure, even get an approval from the Inspector General of Police or even from the President of the National Assembly to defend your people. There is no crime there is nowhere in the world where self-defense is a crime. If the killers can come and kill legally, let me say they are killing us legally, don't we have the right to defend ourselves legally? Now, why are we going to be arrested if the governor arm us, if the governor builds state security apparatuses to checkmate the excessiveness of these people? Now we have the forest guard, the forest rangers. Let's hope that they are equipped to mount strategically the forest. But more importantly, technology, area digital, geographical positioning should be deployed to all the nooks and crannies of Benue. And the same should be done to all the forest areas and our borders in this country, and particularly in Benue Plateau. If our borders are digitalized, my brother, no metal substance like guns will cross that border without digital notification in the operating room.
Now, Honorable Atayi, talking about borders, just to chip in so that you don't lose your train of thoughts as well. There's also been a report of a particular cursed rice, which the Nigerian Customs has had to refute this morning, labeling the claims as purely malicious. It's caused panic in Lagos and Ogun states, and you wouldn't see reasons why Nigerians should not panic, because you remember when there was a certain rubber rice making the rounds about a few years ago. You're talking about the need to strengthen our borders in this regards. How about this malicious reports about certain food commodities that cause panic?
Those food commodities, they are not coming from Nigerians. Nigerians don't have the technology to produce synthetic rice or synthetic food. That is only possible from the Asian continent. And of course, they came in through the borders. And so, if our borders are well secured digitally, I don't think you need 1,000 people to mount your border before you can detect illegal substances or weapons entering your country. These things are being done in Israel. These things are being done in Russia. These things are being done in America, even in UK. You cannot cross the border without being electronically, viewed, even down to your bone. Whatever you are carrying will be known. Have we not spent money on corruption or embezzled money via corruption enough that we could digitalize our border, digitalize our forest, even digitalize our street? So sad that our street and our roads are still in the state of needing basic or infrastructural improvement after 64 years of our independence.
Now, Honorable Atayi,
we should not make our country a caricature of a human inhabitation, because we are human beings.
Now, these social services and commodities are part of the CPI, which, with the NBS, carries out its measurement of where our inflation is. Now, we're told that the three main contributors to headline inflation are food, non-alcoholic beverages, and transportation services. In as much as a university don is captured on one of the papers this morning, commending this slight depreciation in inflation, saying that it would boost investors' confidence and give testaments to our macroeconomy or on the quality of life of Nigerians. A lot of persons do not understand this economics of what inflation is saying. All they earn for is affordable living conditions. How do we press home these demands?
My brother, do we need a 3-digit inflation percentage in Nigeria? Nigeria that is endowed with everything that the whole world needs, and our inflation is on 3-digit percentage. Count the time from Shagari Fest to now. Are we supposed to be progressive, or are we supposed to be retrogressive? At the time of Buhari, Second Republic of Shagari, what is our inflation rate? 0 point something. Okay, down to Jonathan. Let me even start from 2015. Jonathan left inflation at 5%. That is 1 digit. When he was handing over in May 29th, 2015, the inflation due to whatever dollar rise and oil, which is our major GDP, the inflation rose to 7.7%. Still 1 digit. Now you have 24, 34. Then the exchange rate, you can see the gap between the exchange rate. Nigeria is not a dollar nation, but dollar dominates our market because of the American influence and the international influence that have made dollar the commercial monetary exchange. Why can't we try to look into other Asian countries where we can get, where all our commodities even come from, our home appliances and everything that we use? Alternatively, you can even see that the Chinese are even doing what we call memorandum of understanding in terms of infrastructural for us. The road from Kefi down to Enugu, I learned is the Chinese people that are doing it. That is like, I give you this thing, and then I take that one in 30 years. We can do some exchange, collateral exchange like that. Can we do that with the United Kingdom? Can we do that with the United States of America? If we can do that with Chinese and other Asian countries, why can't we think and say, okay, well, our exports can go like this? Our major GDP is the oil, of course, because we can no longer farm in terms of subsistence and even mechanized farming in the country, which will bring agricultural produces and reduce food inflations. And this food inflation cannot, or is not about to stop, Because right now, if you have a family of 3 and you used to take 50,000 naira to feed them in a month, at the moment you need 300,000 to feed them in a month if they must eat appropriately. And for the big men, 300,000 is like now 3 million that they have to spend on food. That is the inflation that we are talking, and not the number, the digits that they are calling by the statistics that they are calling. The real inflation, when I used to buy my corn, my agbado with 100 naira, and now the corn that I used to buy for 100 naira, the corn roaster is saying the corn now is 500 naira per stick. That is the inflation we are talking about. How many percentage increase? That is 4% increase for only me at that particular hour. At noon, I will still eat. In the evening, I will still eat. So when you have 4 times 3, you have 12% inflation affecting only me from my economy, from my pocket. So that is how to calculate the real inflation.
Now let's also look at commitments from stakeholders. One of the reports making the round this morning, BUA chairman, Mr. Abdul Rabiu, has commended the president for the earlier waiver on importation of certain food items. He's also warning some of those hoarding commodities that, from the rice angle, they would ensure a crash in the prices of rice. I remember last year there was so much uproar on how expensive rice has become in the country, more so that even the minimum wage cannot afford you a bag. In terms of stakeholders' commitment to supporting this initiative, how do you judge this commitment as promised by the BUA chairman?
My brother, forget all of those sycophants and hypocrites. I'm sorry to say, we have had them before, thousands of them, coming to help government in one way or the other. All they do is to form cooperative societies and bring pseudonyms. You have pseudo-names and then the real people who are to benefit. Don't we have an agricultural risk management scheme in this country? We have them. Have you approached the agricultural risk or the Bank of Agriculture and you take a loan as an individual or farmer? No. They form cooperatives and give to the government. Meanwhile, the government have each and every one of our data. If the government press their data today, they'll see me, Daniel Atayi. They'll see everything about me. Can they?
Are you sure? Are you sure, Honorable Atayi, that the government has that data? Because I've seen Nigerians raising concerns on the lack of a national social register, one that is comprehensive.
They have that data, but the government do not have harmonized data bank. The government have my data. I have a driving license, driver's license. I have international passport. I have a voter's card.
Honorable Atayi, that's a little bit elitist. They say you're not part of the poorest of the poor that should be captured in the national social data if you have a passport and a driving license.
The yardstick that they are showing, that they are giving us before you benefit, they'll say, if your card, imagine the former minister of humanitarian and disaster management, Hajia Farouk, somebody. She said the people that are going to be given palliative during the COVID-19 are people that have nothing in their data, that cannot load 100 naira recharge card. If you have 1,000 naira recharge card in your listing, you are a big Nigerian, you are a big citizen, and you are a citizen that have money. Whereas the government has never paid you any money like national security, whatever, or benefit or social security. So the country is not implementation. I mean, it's not the promulgations of various policies, the execution. And the execution has no monitoring and evaluation because we have no stringent measure against corruption. So anything you do in the country, as far as you did not kill corruption by either death penalty or long sentence, there is no way the country can progressively move on. Everything will move through, will die either through political party affiliation or through religious sentiment or through tribal ethnic bigotries or sentiment. That is why I say these are the nationalism trajectories that Nigeria have, and until we shift away from those things and build a concrete constitution and ensure that penalties for corruption are of the highest, we will never have a nation, whether democratic or military in nature.
Now, in closing, this is final. It's a thoughts on the political affiliations, because it's also heating up towards 2027. It's now heating up from the part of coalitions. The presidency is frowning at former VP Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, who said that even in the APC, amidst the rumors of a one-party state, that the APC, PDP, and LP are looking to mold a coalition that would form the formidable opposition going into 2027 against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. What do you make of this one-party state accusation and this coalition now that the former VP is saying that even APC is looking to join?
A situation where one man controls political party, is that fair enough? One man control a political party that is supposed to be umbrella for people to seek leadership and elective position in the country that called itself a democratic nation. For instance, who controls the APC? Mr. President, of course. Party chairman, who is the national party chairman? Alhaji Ganduje. Then who controls the PDP? Of course, not Atiku. It is Wike. And Wike is an appendage of who? Mr. President. So, are you going to tell me that PDP is standing now?
Your former governor Suswam, His Excellency Suswam, said the PDP is currently in ICU, and come 2027, if nothing is done, they might be further plunged into coma or even comatose.
When you see, I blame Atiku when he made a good choice of making ex-governor Wike the vice presidential candidate. This whole problem started from there. He pronounced that he has chosen Wike to be his presidential vice presidential candidate. And within 24 hours, people like Babangida Aliyu, the former governor of Niger State, went to advise him. Because I watched Babangida Aliyu, this is not a kind of name calling. I watched him on channels Politics Today, live, where he was castigating Wike as being stubborn, being this, being that, and that they should go for cover the Delta State governor. That was the day I wept. I said, no. By the way, I am the Wike of Benue. Because I am PDP and I have appointment at the National Assembly through an APC lawmaker, a pragmatic young man, Philip Abese, who is doing well, is the only one making us proud in Benue. So, Wike was dumped for Okowa. And immediately I said, this is the death of PDP. Because Wike alone has empowered. Wike is like a giver. Wike is not somebody that plays the elitism. Wike can move with the young, the good, the bad, the ugly. Wike knows the street. Wike knows how to handle people. Wike is an asset to Atiku. He was an asset if he would be the vice presidential candidate. But alas, immediately they dropped Wike and chose Okowa. I said, oh, PDP has made the biggest blunder. Today, what do you see? PDP has become an appendage of the APC at all states, not only the G5 states alone, all the states. The National Working Committee of PDP now is a compromised status quo. Compromised status quo that is working with APC. And of course, is it the SDP you want to talk about? The Labour Party with the whole revolution of the Obidati conundrums. What do you have today? You can see all the party breaking down to only APC. It is not as if APC have maintained the blueprint they sold to us before 2015 in terms of trajectory for the nation, and of which I want to hold Mr. President accountable, because he is the brain behind the blueprint of AD to ACN, from ACN to APC. Before they synergized with CPC of Buhari and produced Buhari as president, in 2015. Now, the current president, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who has been an activist since the past 40 years plus, and pushed himself to the pinnacle of becoming the president, the number one citizen of this country. I don't think he has any excuse of not making this nation work. If he has no excuse of making this nation work, if he has excuses of making this nation work, that means Nigeria should be forgotten completely. Because this is a man that was on the street talking about true federalism, resource control, redefine autonomy for local government, autonomy for houses of assembly and national assembly. This is a man that has done all manner of national and international activism in solidarity with democracy. So if our democracy becomes weaker under him, he has himself to be blamed. History and posterity will be written exactly for him.
All right.
He came, he saw, and never conquered.
All right.
If he came, he saw, and he conquered, then now he should do what? In the Nigerian constitution, we are ripe for independent candidature. Enough with partisan affiliations and party politics. We are also independent candidature. We are also done for rotational of presidency and rotational of governorship across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country and across the 3 senatorial zones or districts in us.
All right, Honorable Atayi, I must thank you. I'm afraid time.
Democracy.
I must thank you. I'm afraid time is not our friend.
It's not only for the most populous majority, but minority inclusive.
Thank you very much, Honorable Atayi, for taking out time to attend to this conversation this morning. We do appreciate you, and we hope that going into the coming weeks would revisit this conversation on rotational presidency and the debates therein. We appreciate you.
I am most obliged. Much available anytime, any day. Thank you, ADBM, for the privilege.
You're welcome.